Good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is our regularly scheduled city council meeting. It is Tuesday, February 6th, 6 p.m., and we start every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. So please join me in rising. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'll ask the city clerk to take roll.
Barbara Bynum.
Present.
J. David Reed.
Present.
Dave Frank.
Present.
Doug Glassbell.
Present.
Ed Ulibarri. Here. Shiloh Worthen. Here. All city councilors and our youth council representative are present.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Are there any changes to the agenda, including additions or deletions?
No, Madam Mayor, no additions or deletions.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. I know we're a little short on space. I understand there is an overflow room. I don't know if we have folks in it. Not yet? Okay, good. Well, then maybe we have just the right amount of seats tonight. And so thank you so much for coming out to City Council meeting tonight. I would imagine it is not for our decision to buy some new trucks. It is there's some other things on our agenda, but I'm really glad you're here, and the participation is fantastic. It's nice to see so many of our residents' faces here tonight. So the next thing on our agenda is always what we call the call for public comment for non-agenda items. So this is if you want to make public comment, but it's not about something on our agenda. My guess is that almost all of you, if not all of you, are here to make public comment or to watch one of our particular agenda items. But I don't want to overlook someone who came tonight to address council, as we do at every meeting, about something that's not on our agenda. So is there anyone here who wants to address council about something not on our agenda? Okay. I am, however, since I think many of you are planning on making public comments, I am going to read the legal language that pertains to all public comments that we receive at council meetings. And that is that personal attacks and disagreements, personnel and employment matters, the use of profanity, or ethnic, racial, or gender-oriented slurs are prohibited, as is any disorderly conduct which violates state or local law shall not be permitted during the public comment time. Okay, so we have no one here for non-agenda public comment, so we'll keep moving through our agenda. We do have a few items before we get to the rezoning that I believe most of you are here for, so if you just hang in with us, these usually move pretty quickly, and we'll go through them the way we normally go through a meeting. And that is the first thing for a vote by council is approval of minutes. And this is council consideration of the minutes of the January 16th, 2024 special city council meeting and the January 16th, 2024 regular city council meeting. And these were in our packet.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 16, 2024 special council meeting and the January 16, 2024 regular city council meeting.
Okay, we have a second on that, so go ahead and please vote. We vote electronically on our laptops, and then as soon as it's all completed, it takes a few seconds, and then the vote will pop up on the screen, and it pops up for us the same time it pops up for all of you. That's a great example. The minutes passed unanimously. Okay, so moving on to item 7. This is a special events alcohol permit application, and this is council consideration of an application for special events alcohol permit in conjunction with the closure of South Junction Avenue on Saturday, March 16, 2024 for the St. Patrick's Day Beer Fest. And I will turn this item over to our city clerk, Lisa Del Piccolo, who will provide council with additional information and kind of, for the public who might not have read the packet, what this is about.
Thank you, Mayor Bynum and City Council. We did receive an application for a special events alcohol permit, and it will be part of the St. Patrick's Day Beer Fest on March 16th. The event will take place on a city street. It'll be South Junction Avenue between Main Street and South First Street, kind of between Felonies and Horsefly. And anytime we have an alcohol permit on a city street, we do require City Council approval. So we are also required to hang a poster on the site for 10 days. We did hang the poster, and no comments were received.
Okay, great. Council, are there any questions about this item that's in front of us tonight? We were briefed on this item at a work session. We have work sessions on Mondays, and we usually go over in detail items that are going to come before us for a vote, except items that are quasi-judicial in nature, like tonight's rezoning. We didn't discuss that at a previous work session. Tonight will be the first time that we'll hear and consider that information. But for an item like this, we went over maps, we asked questions at our work session 2 weeks ago. We also receive public comment on every item that we're going to vote on. And so I will ask if there's any public comment for this particular item for this special events alcohol permit application. Is there anyone wishing to make comment? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion from council.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve a special events alcohol permit in conjunction with the closure of South Junction Avenue on Saturday, March 16th, 2024, as presented.
Second.
So we have a first and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Taking us to item 8, which is resolution 2024-03. This is council consideration of a resolution authorizing the city manager and staff to pursue a community development block grant through the Colorado Department of Local Affairs Division of Housing on behalf of Volunteers of America for the purposes of the Rendezvous Apartments acquisition, rehab, and construction project on 2366 Robbins Way in Montrose. And I'll turn this over to our Community Development Specialist, Christopher Ottinger, for the information piece that goes with the information in our packet.
Absolutely. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, members of the public. The item before council today is a resolution authorizing the city manager and staff to apply for a community development block grant on behalf of Volunteers of America. For those who do not know, a community development block grant, otherwise known as CDBG, is a program created by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, otherwise known as HUD, to fund a variety of activities to support low to moderate income segments of the community. The funds are administered on a state level via the Department of Local Affairs, for this project specifically, the Division of Housing. For those unfamiliar with Volunteers of America, VOA is a national nonprofit organization that provides local human services programs and opportunities for individuals and community involvement. For over 125 years, the VOA has been serving the needs of the nation's homeless, individuals and families, veterans, youth at risk, the elderly, disabled, and many others, 1.5 million people annually. VOA is one of the largest nonprofit providers of quality, affordable housing for families, elderly, and people with disabilities, and a major provider of skilled long-term nursing care and health services. VOA ranks consistently as one of the nation's most efficient nonprofits, with a high proportion of revenues going directly to the program services. VOA provides extensive housing and healthcare services in the Montrose community and has done so for a number of years. With that in mind, VOA has pursued the state tax credit funding to rehabilitate and expand their portion of its campus known as Pavilion Gardens at the Robbins Way address. That portion of the campus is reaching the end of its functional life and provides an opportunity to redesign and to better serve the senior population that the rest of the campus is currently geared towards with its PACE Inclusive Care Center, assisted living, Section 202 properties, a senior center, and doctor's offices. The project will be renamed Rendezvous and will serve the low-income seniors of Montrose by remodeling the existing 30-unit building and constructing a new 22-unit building employing the latest trauma-informed design. This addresses a critical need in the Montrose area where other existing senior housing has more than a 2-year wait list. VOA is asking the city to apply for CDBG funds in the amount of $2.86 million or $55,000 per unit on behalf of VOA to finance the gap that exists for this project. The total project cost to date is roughly about $22 million. If the council approves of a resolution, the application is accepted, and the funds are awarded, the city would serve as simply as a pass-through entity and would not create an additional burden on city budget outside of staff time for administration and reporting of grant funds. There is no required match for this type of grant. I have here with me I believe, Doug Snyder, Vice President of Regional Real Estate Development for VOA, and he will be the project manager for this rendezvous project. He or I will be happy to answer any questions from the council or the public about this project.
Thank you very much. Mr. Snyder, do you have any comments, or are you just here in case we have some questions?
The latter. Chris did a good job overview there, so yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Council, we did talk about this at our work session just yesterday. It does come to us for a vote just a day later because of the timely nature of the grant deadline. Does council have any questions for either Mr. Ottinger or Mr. Schneider tonight? How about clarification? Sometimes we like to clarify how we are a pass-through for this grant. You want to?
Perhaps we could, and I know Chris covered this, but to just be clear that this is a pass-through for the city. It's budget neutral for the city. We're simply acting as the facilitator for the block grant.
Yes, and it does look like, I mean, should VOA receive the grant through the Division of Housing, it would add a $2.86 million to our budget, but we would show that as income, and then we would show it passing through to VOA. I think that we usually like to make that distinction, and that the city does provide some staff time in order to administer the grant and help. But other than that, as you mentioned, there is not a match that the city has to contribute in cash to this grant. Okay. Is there public comment on the city's resolution authorizing the city manager to act on behalf of the CGBD grant?
Madam Mayor, we need to have a hearing for
Oh,
this.
not public comment, but a hearing. Thank you.
Yes, please.
I appreciate that. A
Thank
hearing
you.
is just like public comment, but I get to go like that and call it a hearing. Legally, it's required, public comment isn't. So a hearing, is there any public comment for a hearing on this? Seeing none, I'll close the hearing. And would accept a motion from a fellow city councilor.
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt Resolution 2024-03 as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Please vote. And that passes unanimously, and I can probably speak for all of us that we wish a lot of luck to VOA on receiving that. I can see that almost $3 million would go a long way to helping them with their big project. Okay, next up, item 9.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
You're welcome to stay for the next 4 hours. No, okay, thank you. Okay, it's really, we're not going to be here 4 hours. Amendments to the contract for the sale of historic City Hall. This is item 9, and this is council consideration of proposed amendments to the contract for the sale of historic City Hall building at 433 South First Street in Montrose. And I will turn this over to our city attorney for the staff briefing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of City Council, this might be a little bit familiar. We discussed this just yesterday at our work session. As we all know up here, and probably many of the public know, City Hall has moved from the historic City Hall building to the building on Main Street. When this was all occurring, the city was approached by the owners of the soon-to-be Rathbone Hotel in order to purchase the building. With that, as we all know, or most of us likely know, that costs of renovation and construction have far exceeded many people's expectations. Originally, the contract was set to close for August of 2023, but due to these rising costs, we've pushed out that date to August of 2024. Once again, the costs have continued to rise for the owners of the Rathbone Hotel. And they are asking that we amend the contract again. The amendment that I will be effecting will be to return a portion of the earnest money that's being held in escrow to the owners of the Rathbone in exchange for the city being able to market, if we so choose. We may market Historic City Hall. We do not, it's not required. And if there is a secondary buyer for the Rathbone, we will
Not the
give.
Rathbone.
Or, excuse me, for Historic City Hall, thank you. We will give the owners of the Rathbone the option to execute the contract as written within 30 days. If they do not close, if we do not close within that 30-day window, then the contract will terminate, and we will then be able to contract with a third party. With that, I do believe the owners of the Rathbone Hotel are virtual, so if they have anything to say, that now is the time, but I'll open to questions.
Absolutely. Hi, and thanks for joining us virtually. Do you have anything to add, or are you just here in case we have questions?
The latter, Ms. Mayor. I'm here to help answer any questions, and I feel like the information Greg presented was spot on.
Great. Council, any questions or comments?
No, I think that we've had several opportunities to review this, so I'm satisfied with where we are.
I think so. I think it's a little bit of a win-win. It frees up some cash for their project, but gives us the right, should another buyer come along, to entertain those discussions and/or ask them to execute the contract. So that is what we got out of the deal. Okay. Is there any public comment about this amendment to the contract for the sale of Historic City Hall? Let's see. This is a public comment. Any public comment? Okay, seeing none. Council, a motion, please.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the proposed amendments to the contract for the sale of the Historic City Hall building at 433 South First Street in Montrose as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. And thank you to our guests for joining us tonight and being here in case we had any additional questions.
Thank you all. Appreciate you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bales.
Thank you.
Okay, that allows us to move on to our next item, which is item number 10. This is ordinance 2656. This is a second reading. So every ordinance or law that we pass, we read it twice. So we'll vote twice. And that sometimes gives the public and us time to have an opinion or to hear additional comments about an item. So when you see an ordinance, you'll always see that it's either the first reading or the second reading of the ordinance. And every ordinance has to be read and voted on twice. So this is ordinance 2656, and this is the second reading. So should this pass tonight, then the ordinance would go into our municipal code. This is council consideration of an ordinance authorizing, although it does say first reading in the text. So can I confirm this is the second reading now that I just explained the difference between first reading and second reading?
It is the second reading. This is the second reading.
This is the second reading. Okay, so this is the second reading. This is authorizing the conveyance of an interest in city-owned real estate pursuant to Section 1-9-2 of the official code of the city of Montrose. And this is that utility easement that our Public Works Director, Jim Scheid, will tell us about.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. So yes, ordinance 2656 is for utility easement, and then actually the next ordinance is 2657 for an access easement on the same property. So I'll just talk about it once, but there's actually two ordinances that you'll vote on.
Perfect.
And so this is the second reading, as you said, which means this is actually the third time that we've talked about it, and there's been no changes since we began this subject. There is a map in the packet for clarification, but basically it's right across the street here on a city-owned parcel of Old City Hall, and the easements are to allow a sewer line and access on an area that's been previously used as an alleyway anyway, and is pretty minimal impact to the city. So we're recommending approval of these ordinances. But I'd be happy to answer any questions if anything has come up.
Thank you very much. And like you mentioned, we have talked about this pretty extensively. The process that we use means we talked about it first at a work session where we were presented with a map, had a full discussion, had some back and forth where we had questions. Then we voted on it at a previous city council meeting, and now we're voting on it a second time. For those of you who are curious what we're talking about, so you don't all have packets in front of you, it's what looks like an alley between what will be the Rathbone Hotel and the old City Hall. It looks like an alley, but it's really not. The property comes together there. So the new owner we're doing a utility easement to make sure we can keep accessing the utilities. And then the next thing we vote on will be they want a doorway onto the alley that's not really an alley, and we're going to vote on whether to do that. So, any questions from council? I don't think anyone had any. Okay, so we do need to officially hold a hearing on this, so I'll do the gavel. Is there any public comment for the second reading of this ordinance? Seeing none, I'll close the hearing and accept a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance 2656 on second reading as presented.
I'll second. Yes.
And that passes unanimously. And so now we go on to the second piece of that, which is item 11, which is ordinance 2657. This is also a second reading. And this is authorizing the conveyance of an interest in city-owned real estate pursuant to section 1-9-2 of the official code of the city of Montrose. And this is for an access easement, and this also requires a hearing. And so I'm assuming I should ask council, any questions on the access easement? Okay, then I'll go ahead and open the hearing and ask if there's any public comment on the access easement. Seeing none, I'll close the hearing and accept the motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 2657 on second reading as presented.
Second.
Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Next on the agenda, item 12. This is the Tributary Street Extension Construction Contract. And this is council consideration of the approval of $698,645.88 in expenditures for construction of the Tributary Street Extension Project. This includes the award of a construction contract to Old Castle Southwest Group doing business as United Companies in the amount of $639,645.88, a survey and engineering support contract to Delmont Consultants in the amount of $24,000, natural gas extension expenditures of $10,000, and up to $25,000 in expenditures to Delta Montrose Electric Association for power line extensions. And I will turn this over to City Engineer Scott Murphy to describe a little bit about the information we all have in our packet in which we have previously discussed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So no changes since the discussion at the work session, but I'll do a really quick overview. This is the next kind of infrastructure road extension project in Colorado Outdoors. As development has kind of marched towards the north end, we initially didn't do this area because we didn't know how things were going to shape up. And now we know as development has occurred kind of all around there. And one thing we don't want to do is build a road on speculation and have it in the wrong place. Now we're at a point where we can build that. The work itself, we had 3 bids. United was the lowest. The other 2 were K&D and Able. 3 bids were $639, $679, and $721. So a pretty good bid opening, relatively tight, which is how we like to see them. The work itself, latest schedule from the contractor, they would look to start in March and finish towards the end of summer. This is going on alongside the medical center, the hotel, and the Flex Park constructions, but it's written in, they'll all kind of coordinate together. The trailhead up at that end for the Uncompahgre River Trail has been closed and will remain closed until this is done, but will be fully reestablished upon completion of the project. I think the only other kind of piece to speak to is the budget. So this is over what was budgeted. The scope didn't really grow throughout the design. It's just prices are a little higher right now, or a bit higher right now, with general demand within the market and cost escalation. So it's, unit rates are pretty on par with what we're seeing. Other projects have. We just actually did the closeout on 6700. Last year's MoveMo, they've all trended really well under budget. So in net, the capital fund should be able to pretty easily absorb this. If not, that would be a supplement. But I think that's all I have to say. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Okay.
I think we've discussed this at length in work session. I'm
Yeah.
comfortable with it.
So I will, this requires not a hearing, but public comment. So is there any public comment other than, wow, roads are expensive? Okay, seeing no public comment, I would turn it back to council for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the $698,645.88 in expenditures for the construction of the tributary street extension project as presented.
Second.
Okay, please go ahead and vote. And that passes unanimously. Okay, next on our agenda item is item 13. We planned on taking a pause to see if we could, if there were additional folks who were looking for a seat and trying to get them to sit down, but I think we've been able to accommodate people as they arrive. Also, I don't think there's anyone here at this point who didn't intend to stay for this part of the meeting, although if you really were here just to see if we awarded that road contract, now's a great time to leave. It's awkward because the floor squeaks a lot, and so we want to let people know they don't have to stay if they were just here for that item. So I think in that way, I think we're good to keep going, then we don't necessarily have to take a 10-minute recess. Okay. So before we begin on item 13, I will say that this is a little bit different for council because unlike all the items you just heard, we haven't heard this at a work session previously. So this comes to us when we are making a decision about a specific piece of property and not a citywide ordinance or a contract award. We don't, it's like sitting in front of a judge a little bit, and we don't go out in the community and have one-on-one conversations with you. So if you emailed council with your comments, we made sure that those comments were shared amongst the whole council, and we all got them. And we didn't call you back or email you back because that would have meant that we had a one-on-one conversation about this item, and then we wouldn't be able to participate in making a decision. So if you emailed council and you didn't get a response, it isn't that we're being rude, it's that this is a quasi-judicial decision and we can't have those one-on-one conversations. So that being said, council will be presented with information from staff tonight in order to make a decision that aligns with our code and our ordinances. And we will also have public comment on this issue. And I will do my best to manage the public comment time so that everyone who showed up who wanted to say something has a chance to say something. We may decide that if someone's already said and you just want to get up and agree with them, that you can say that. You don't have to take up your full amount of time because we really want to use everyone's time wisely. But I will reiterate what I said at the beginning of the meeting, which is it's really great to see you all here. We oftentimes have meetings where there is no one in the audience, and so it is fun. Although it's also a little bit like, we want to manage expectations and we want everyone to leave this meeting feeling like they participated in a civic process that worked. So that being said, we'll go forward here with item 13.
Could I raise a point of order?
No, it doesn't work that way. So item 13 is ordinance 2659. This is first reading. So like every ordinance, it'll have two readings. So the vote tonight will be the first of two votes. This is City Council consideration of ordinance 2659 on first reading. This is an ordinance of the City of Montrose amending the zoning district designation of a portion of the Sugar Pine subdivision from R2 low density district to R3 medium density district. And just like we did on the previous items, I'll turn it over to staff. Staff will present council with information. Unlike previous items, the information we got in our packet, the comments we received, and the information we're about to hear, this will be the first time we reviewed it. And then there will be questions from council, discussion, and there will be public comment. So you will get a turn. I just ask that you be patient. We might have more questions than we did on the previous 10 items. So, Jace Hockwell, am I turning it over to you? No, I'm turning it over to William Reese, sorry. William Reese, who is in our planning department.
Yes,
Hi.
thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, and members of City Council, and members of the public. The owner of a property located on the northwestern corner of 6700 Road and Miami Road has submitted a rezone application for said property. This map shows the vicinity of the area. The property as a whole is approximately 37.31 acres in size and is split not quite in half by a creek. There's about 16.7 acres on the northern side of the creek that is currently zoned R3 medium density district, and then approximately 20.61 acres is on the south side of the creek, and this is currently zoned R2 low density district. The property owner is requesting a rezone of this portion of the property to R3 medium density district. According to section 11712 of the municipal code, rezoning may be requested or initiated by the owner of any legal interest in the property or such owner's representative. So any property owner does have the right to request a rezone. Amendments to the official zoning map involving any changes to the designation of a district shall be allowed only upon findings as follows. The amendment is not adverse to the public health, safety, and welfare, and the amendment is in substantial conformity with the master plan, or the existing zoning is erroneous, or conditions in the area affected or adjacent areas have changed materially since the area was last zoned. These are some pictures of the property in question. As you can see, it is currently an undeveloped field. The picture on the left is from the southeastern corner of the property, and the picture on the right is from the northern edge of the property. According to the code, the R3 medium density district is intended to provide for an area which is suitable for both single-family homes and duplexes, along with certain other compatible land uses. This property was originally annexed and zoned in 2007. Obviously, the 6700 road extension was recently completed to the southeast. And this is the zoning exhibit that was provided by the applicant. The line in the middle shows the existing creek, which, as mentioned, splits the property. The north side of the creek is already zoned R3, so this application does not affect that side of the property. The southern portion of the property is where the rezone is proposed. These are the dimensional standards for both the R2 and R3 zoning districts. R2 only allows for single-family development with a maximum square footage of 7,500 square feet per single-family lot. R3 allows for single-family and duplex lots as a use by right with a minimum of 6,250 square feet for a single-family lot and 9,375 square feet for a duplex lot. Multifamily, which is defined as anything over 2 units, is considered a conditional use and requires further approvals and hearings. Now, with any zoning district, there's the possibility of a planned development. A property owner can apply for that, which would allow an applicant to shift densities with a maximum unit count equating to the land area divided by the minimum lot size. Now, a planned development does require further approval than what you're hearing tonight, so that number is not necessarily guaranteed. With just a standard subdivision and with no PD overlay, the numbers are pretty difficult to calculate since it is ultimately up to the applicant and their design team to figure out what can be accomplished. But in a typical subdivision, you lose some space to the open space requirements and road dedication requirements. The exact amount that you lose varies from subdivision to subdivision, but it's typically approximately ranging from 30 to 40% of the area. With this, considering the creek takes away a good amount, probably closer to 40%, but again, that depends on the applicant and their design team. And so these numbers here, some of them are approximations, but they may vary. Also, these are numbers for the southern portion of the property. Keep in mind the northern portion of the property is not applying to be rezoned. So under the current zoning with a planned development, the maximum number of single-family homes that could be built would be 119. Under a standard subdivision, it would be approximately 71, could possibly range up to 80 or so. Again, that number could go up or down. It really depends on the applicant and their design. Under the proposed R3 zoning, it gets a little more complicated when you're talking about single-family versus duplexes. Under a straight subdivision with no PD, there could be approximately 86 single-family homes or 57 duplexes. 57 duplexes would equate to 114 units. Again, that could go up or down depending on their design. With a planned development, they could, in theory, request 143 single-family homes or 95 duplexes, equating to 190 units. And then there is the theoretical possibility that they could request a conditional use permit to build a multifamily development with a theoretical maximum of 309 units. But I should point out that planning staff feels that that would be well beyond a supportable density. And if we did receive an application for that, we would recommend denial. According to the future land use map of the comprehensive plan, this area is listed as residential mixed density low, which provides primarily for single-family homes as well as small amounts of attached residential dwelling units, such as duplexes and even small groups of townhomes. I should note that townhomes are defined in the same manner as multifamily, and so attached residential development cannot be done in the R2 zoning district. Our comprehensive plan also outlines several goals, including in land use and housing. One such goal is to promote higher density infill and redevelopment of underutilized sites and support development in areas that can be easily accessed by foot, bike, and/or public transit. In the housing and neighborhood goals, Goal 1 is to encourage a variety of housing types, tenure, and density in order to meet the needs of the community and promote a mix of residential housing types, including single-family homes on a variety of lot sizes, multifamily housing, townhomes, apartments, senior housing, and transitional housing. Goal 2 is to increase access to affordable housing by encouraging a mix of housing price ranges, thereby providing choices for residents of all incomes and ages, and supporting and working with housing agencies, organizations, private developers, and businesses to increase the amount of workforce housing. Staff does find that the proposal meets the rezone criteria stated in section 11.712, and is in compliance with the comprehensive plan and compatible with existing uses in the surrounding area. The Planning Commission voted 4-3 to recommend approval of the rezone, and staff recommends approval. At this point, I will turn it over to Jace to speak a little bit.
We'll let Scott touch on just the subdivision process in general and some infrastructure, and then I'll talk a little bit about housing.
Thank you. So I think just for the benefit of the council, for a lot of the questions that'll come up tonight, I'll just touch on a refresher on the subdivision process and how infrastructure plays into that, because that is kind of at the heart of a lot of the concerns and questions that get brought up. So regardless of the zoning, any future application, PD included, but primarily through the main subdivision process would include, the full subdivision process with all of the infrastructure plans and all of the kind of infrastructure evaluations. So for a subdivision, that includes water. They did demonstrate availability of water and fire protection, sewer, obviously sizing of the pipes, make sure the infrastructure can support it. Traffic's obviously a big one. So in those, they have to do a traffic study for all the areas, its access points, turn lanes into the access points, and roadways it'll feed into. So it looks at all the intersections. They draw a line, I think it's like 10 or 15%, but all the intersections and roadways affected by this development and how the anticipated volumes would compare to established standards. That's a big one. So making sure that the streets they go out on can handle the volumes, the intersections don't get overwhelmed. And then from there, two things get used. If this is going to put us over the top for like the 6700 intersection, we need a signal out there. Then it comes into the city's capital planning efforts to make sure that we align ours with staying ahead of growth and development, because it's not just this neighborhood that contributes to those. But the other trigger is also looking at, do they need an acceleration lane or something coming out of their neighborhood? The other pieces are, geotech, looking at the soils, make sure everything works with the roads and doesn't compromise our infrastructure, lighting, things of that sort, all get flushed out through that phase. And then in addition to that, the city does have we have capital plans for the citywide kind of infrastructure network, kind of specific to this area. Obviously with 6700 just got punched through, that changes the traffic patterns in the area. There's other work to be done to supplement all of that. Obviously intersections, as growth builds out, you'd see the 6700 intersections transition into four-way stops when you get more side volume, and then eventually roundabouts. Those are probably decades out, but in the near term, we do have plans for the widening of the bridge at 6700 at Cedar Creek, which is near this subdivision. And this summer, we're doing the warrant evaluations for the signal at 6700 and the highway. Again, that's not just this neighborhood that would prompt that, but once the Niagara detour and once Little Blue is done, traffic patterns stabilize. With the new 6700 open, we need to look at, can we put a signal in there? CDOT doesn't let us, that joins a state highway, so CDOT doesn't let us put in a signal until we hit a certain volume threshold. So we'll be checking to see if we get there this year. If so, then obviously that just plays into future planning efforts. Miami Road is a dream of everybody's obviously all of our minor arterials, we want to get to the current standard eventually. Just it does take time, and you're about $8 million a mile or so, so they're no small projects. It really is kind of development that facilitates prioritization of where those finite dollars do go. So as areas build out and the traffic gets to a point where those existing roads can't handle those volumes, and again, that gets compared to established standards, because if you just leave it up to subjectivity, that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people of what a road can handle. So we go back to established safety standards, and that plays into our capital planning efforts of when Miami would get widened, or, Ogden, or any of our minor arterials. They start out as county roads, and as the city grows out, they turn into, the more modern template. And so that, unfortunately, due to cost, can also take decades, but development and city growth is a catalyst for those to happen eventually. And I think with that, this neighborhood, when it does come, it would have its, standard frontage improvements for sidewalks and stuff to make sure that we have safe pedestrian connectivity, so that those roads do work for the interim until they can be widened. So I think, just really high flying coverage of how the process works after this, but that really doesn't tie into the zoning. That all comes at the subdivision process, should they move forward in the future. So with that, Jason's going to talk housing.
Thanks, Scott. Good evening, council. So I've provided a presentation to a number of community groups specific to housing over the course of the last year, and that really came through our housing needs assessment that was completed last year in late summer of last year. So I just wanted to give kind of a refresher here, because I do think it's pertinent to this rezone. Again, as a reminder to the public, I think to council, really to everybody, the entire housing needs assessment is posted on the City Planning Services webpage. So this slide reflects some general housing terminology. Single-family detached is shown on the left, which is primarily how Montrose is currently built out. Density standards, or density is kind of standardized around 4 units per acre or below for your standard detached single-family housing. Multifamily housing is the image on the far right, and that really refers to multi-unit apartments, typically at a density of 16 units per acre or more. A good local example of that would be the base camp apartments, or the residences at Dry Cedar Creek, which are about 18 units per acre and above. And then middle density housing, referred to as missing middle housing on this slide, is really categorized as everything in between, typically of developments about 6 to 10 units per acre. So this includes duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, similar developments like that. Given the affordability crunch, as well as changing consumer habits favoring lock and leave living and easy maintenance, these types of housing are growing in popularity among many demographics really across the board, and they're also a great option for first-time home buyers and families to build equity when they're provided for a for-sale option such as townhomes. This slide reflects the future housing projections through 2040. The housing needs assessment consultants projected that in order to keep up with current growth, an average of 218 units per year will need to be constructed. The real importance of this slide is the reflected need for and the expected growth of housing diversity as a whole. So middle density housing is expected to grow the most on a percentage basis at almost 70%. That's shown as the second on the slide. Single family really only expected to grow about 13%. Granted, that is the highest number that we have in terms of dwelling units as single family, but again, it paints the picture that middle density housing is really missing, and middle density housing is very much needed. By having zones that accommodate more middle density housing, more flexibility is provided where this can be situated. So the R3 district would allow this through a plan development and conditional use permit process. The R2 district would not allow for this, as that only allows for single-family detached residential. The next couple of slides I'll go through fairly quickly, and they're just the community survey results about perceptions of really the community and the housing in the community. The response rate of this survey was very high. We had over 1,200 responses, which is a pretty high confidence rate for a town of our size. So what this slide shows is the general consensus is that housing is too expensive. 87% of people state that costs are either too high or somewhat high to purchase homes, and 79% feel the same about rental rates. Should be noted that that rental rate is actually probably higher. 15% are unsure in that category, which refers to me that 15% of those are probably homeowners that don't really track those rental rates. I mentioned in the work session yesterday, median income has risen 25% over the last 5 years, but housing prices have gone up 78% over the last 5 years. And then on top of that, mortgage payments have gone up over 125% over the last 5 years. So needless to say, we're seeing a housing crunch in terms of affordability. This slide reflects the responses of the community as it relates to what residents want to see more of. Detached single-family is very high on the list. It's listed as second, and that is to be expected. A lot of people do move to the Montrose area for its rural nature. With that said, there is a very high response rate for workforce housing, as well as attached single-family housing and smaller apartment buildings. One thing to mention is that workforce housing can be a mix of any of these shown on the screen, as it really refers to median income workers being able to find housing that's affordable. What that means is they're not spending more than 30% of their income on housing. So with single-family detached housing really out of reach for a majority, especially kind of in that median income threshold, the middle-density housing types are great for the general workforce population. What this slide really reflects to me is that the community does have an interest in supplying different types of housing just beyond single-family detached homes, and they recognize the need for that missing middle housing product. And then lastly, I show this slide because it really reflects how difficult our jobs can be, as well as the decisions of planning commissions and city councils, not just locally, but everywhere. While most everyone recognizes that housing is very expensive and residents are very open to housing diversity beyond standard detached single-family homes, a majority of people prefer to see lower density next to them. So if this is the mentality, where and how do we accommodate the expected growth? I think that's the million-dollar planning question. That question really emphasizes the importance of long-range planning at the end of the day. Staff would not be supportive of a high-density apartment complex on this site, as it clearly wouldn't fit in the surrounding area. That said, staff would be supportive of accommodating townhomes on site through a conditional use permit and plan development process, where we can regulate exactly what the density is and what types of housing can actually be constructed. As such, staff is in support of the rezone request, and Planning Commission, as William mentioned, did approve that with a 4-3 vote. That concludes my presentation. I know the applicant also has a presentation, so I don't know if you want to open it for questions to staff or let the applicant go ahead.
Council members, would you like to hear the applicant's presentation and hold all of our questions for after the applicant's presentation? Or do you want to entertain some questions now?
My preference would be to hear the applicant first and then go to our others.
Okay, so if the applicant has a presentation, they could, I assume they're online, they could present that now. Oh, no, sorry, not online, in person. Okay. And so for anyone coming forward, we ask for you to identify yourself by name and then your address, neighborhood, or subdivision, so we just get a general sense of that.
Chris Cook, 2049 Brookway. Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council, the neighbors, for everybody showing up. And I just want to start off by addressing everybody in the room, and I do understand their frustration. I can relate to the fact that a rezone is challenging. I can relate to the fact that nobody wants to see more density in their neighborhoods. And I hate to be the bearer of that news, but change is happening across the United States as a whole. And middle income, medium density housing has almost become kind of a requirement. And not just for workforce housing or affordable housing, but also for an elderly or aging population as well. I spent the better part of a decade taking care of elderly over in Denver, Colorado. And what I found is that everybody was looking for the lock and leave mentality. We were looking for something where we didn't have to mow the yard. We didn't need to call in a friend or a family member or somebody to come and make sure that our house was taken care of. And as we started working through Montrose and as we moved back out of the city, we found that there was a huge underutilization of multifamily housing options, diversity of housing, if you will. I think that townhomes are one of the best ways to get a retired couple a home that they can lock and leave and move on. I also believe it's the perfect home for a starter home for a family starting out. As you'll see through our presentation, we've designed Sugar Pine in a way that, we're trying to hit a variety or a broad spectrum of individuals. And also while trying to maintain the integrity of the surrounding neighborhoods. We've spent a lot of time driving the surrounding neighborhoods, looking at the landscape, and just kind of understanding the need of the general vicinity right around us. That was our foremost approach to this, is how can we match the surrounding area while adding density and adding not necessarily affordability, but I mean that happens because of it, right? But adding diversity to the housing and not everything being single-family homes. Before we go into our presentation, we have read every letter that's come through the door across all of, through the Planning Commission and through that last meeting. We read those and we've taken into heart and consideration what the neighbors have said. And a couple things that really stuck out to me and that I just want to touch on is the first, one of the letters stated that they were looking for a lock and leave home, but yet they opposed my rezone. They are looking for a single story lock and leave home, but they don't want this to be rezoned. Well, in order for this to happen, to get a lock and leave, we need the rezone. So it was kind of interesting to me that what they're looking for is what we're offering, but we don't want it necessarily by us. So I found that to be an interesting statement, and I still have to go back to that because there seems to be a need from not only people that aren't here, but from people that are also here tonight as well. People are looking for what we're offering in this in Sugar Pine subdivision, and I'd like to note that. The other thing is we have met with, we did a community outreach where we met with several of the HOA members, and they didn't all get invited. We did our best to give them to kind of give them a preview of what we were thinking and to get their insight and their knowledge as to, what they would like to see as well, what their feedback is. And after the city planning meeting, we did send out a letter. We've created a individual email address on our website that people can ask questions and comments, and we can keep the neighbors up to date on the progress and also give them a place to voice their, what they'd like to see in the development as well. Not only that, we, unfortunately, one of the ladies isn't here tonight that was here at the last planning meeting. She's a direct neighbor of our subdivision, and her house backs up to Cedar Creek, which also flows through our property. And I went over to her house, and we spent a couple hours hanging out, walking around, because she was very concerned about the wildlife and how it was going to affect her. And she did an amazing job on the creek restoration. You might hear tonight that a lot of the neighbors say that we're not going to restore this creek. We are going to restore this creek. This creek is going to become usable. This is a natural waterway that flows from the Cimarrons down. It's underutilized, and it is such an important piece of the Montrose landscape that it will be restored, it will look nice, and it will become a usable amenity for this property. But as I walked her property, what I noticed is she did an amazing job on it. And, and so her and I, dare to say friends, but we did get to an understanding of, how this development can work in conjunction with her property as well. And we're interested in doing that with everybody else that's in the room tonight as well. So Sugar Pine subdivision, it is formed after the word hygge, which is the art of creating intimate moments. It's centrally located in Colorado's most adventurous city. Work here, live here, play here, right? It's our motto. We want to we want to facilitate that as well. A lot of this that you're going to see is kind of the marketing aspect of it. It's centrally located in Montrose, easy access to the mountains, easy access to ski resorts, slopes, golf courses, amenities, and different aspects. The neighboring community, the rezone of this neighbor is imperative and promotes connectivity and the economic growth that benefit not only our community, but also the thriving neighborhoods surrounding it. It's a strategic move to create a more vibrant and interconnected urban landscape. The townhomes and/or duplexes, they start at $350,000. Now, when we say numbers, I just want to clarify this out loud. When we say numbers, these are our best guess as to what we're seeing in current market conditions with current build prices. These could go down, these could slightly go up. There is variety, so I don't want to get too wrapped up in what the price is. The idea is to make them accessible for anybody. They are meticulously crafted. The architects, the design team, we've spent a lot of time on the layout of the subdivision as a whole, as well as what these homes will look like in its entirety as we complete it. Hygge embodies the art of crafting cozy atmospheres and relishing life's simple pleasures. It's a Scandinavian term for those that know, for those that don't. It's a place where we can gather with friends, family. The goal is to create a community inside of a community, right? Montrose as a whole is a community. Inside of Sugar Pine will be its own community as well. Sugar Pine Development is committed to transforming living by focusing on the creation and sustainability of a vibrant community with a mission to enhance the neighborhood fabric. Sugar Pine aims to rezone the southern half to allow for the construction of 2, 3, and 4-unit buildings. These structures will not only offer diversity in housing options, but also foster a sense of community, promoting a harmonious and well-balanced community as a whole. One of the things that we'll hear tonight and on the rezone application, you'll see that through our discussions with the city, they have up to 8 units attached. That's subjective at best. Our plans we've spent a considerable amount of time, money, and energy on this design. And we're going to continue forward with this plan, but it's 2-unit duplexes, 3 units, and 4 units attached. The rezone does request for 8 units. That is not in our plans at this time. You'll see currently on R3 on the north and R2 on the south, this is to create, the rezone is so that we can create an entire community inside of the single parcel that we own. I know that there's going to be some comments from Iron Horse, and rightfully so. The residents on the north side, the access is going to become slightly sticky as we move forward through this. In the preliminary phase, we will have traffic studies done. As we have those traffic studies done, we'll be able to see, what we need to do to make sure that the communities to the north aren't affected negatively. As far as the south is concerned, this is a completely perfect place for this rezone to happen through the build process, as we'll see what we're looking to do on the next slide. Once again, full community designed in R3 on both. This gives you an overall layout of what the site will look like when it's completed, and you'll see that there's 4 units. You can see kind of the scale there, what a duplex is, a triplex, and then a fourplex. So we will be starting in phase 1, which will be the lower left-hand corner, which is a fourplex, a threeplex, a fourplex, duplex, duplex, fourplex, duplex. It'll be the bottom left-hand portion of your screen. Each home is customized with one of these elements. As you'll see, the table and chairs is gather, the fireplace, reading nooks. One of these are designed into each of the home. They don't come in every single home. So whether that's a spa-inspired bathtub or a quiet reading nook or a really nice fireplace in the gathering area, or just more space for somebody to gather, or areas for somebody to garden in their backyard. That's the way that these are designed, so that they get one, not all of. You can kind of get a key on the legend there, what a fireplace is, reading nook, garden, so on and so forth. Once again, it's artfully designed. Everything that we do has, is artistic, has a sense of beauty that we're looking to create. I believe that anybody can be an artist in anything, and that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to paint the landscape, make it attractive to the surrounding neighbors, make it a beautiful place for somebody to call home, as well as utilizing what I think is one of the greatest amenities in all of Montrose. I grew up in Montrose. I've been around here a long time. I know people in this room that have fished Cedar Creek. I have fished Cedar Creek. There are fish in it. It is an amazing little creek and a tributary that comes off of the summit up there at Cerro Summit. I think it's underutilized, and I'm super excited to be able to bring this vision to life. This is a studio. It's one bedroom. It's 800 square feet. It offers an oversized one-car garage. A lot of time people talk about an 800 square foot home being too small. My first home in California with my wife was 707 square feet. It was the greatest home we've ever owned. Even to this moment now, we still talk about 707 square feet, being close to the beach, being tied to our neighbors, having barbecues and friends, and just a connected landscape. So we've really thought these units through, and so the first one, the studio, is an 800 square foot unit. Go to the next. 1,000 square feet becomes a two bed, one bath. Keep in mind, what's important to note that these first two are all single story units, so they appeal to people that are moving here, that are retiring, or somebody who just doesn't want to climb stairs. So for the vast majority of these homes, we aim to keep them at about 70% single story units. About 30% become 1.5 stories. And then the 30 bedroom currently is designed at 1,200 square feet, oversized one-car garage with an open office concept. Well, that's Sugar Pine, kind of in a nutshell. We do have, and I don't want to bore the neighbors, but for those that haven't seen it, we do have a video that kind of gives you the inspiration behind Sugar Pine, the design, the intent. If you guys would like to see it, I know Jace has it, is able to pull it up and share it with you. It's got some words and some music that go along with it, but I know that everybody in this room, for the most part, has already seen the video, so it's really up to City Council if they would like to.
I don't think we need to see the video. Okay. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I think there's an additional piece of information we need, either from our city attorney or our planning department.
Yes. So I do have a few things to say prior to this. When the packet came out, there were, council's always given two options for approval and denial. If it were to go to denial, in the packet originally, it stated it would go to a de novo hearing. This was under our old code prior to our reorganization. Within the reorganization, there was a substantive change where if in fact a rezone is denied, it would not go to a de novo hearing, it would be a final decision. Okay. That's one. Two, we did receive, I believe everybody on council received this email that stated that there is in fact an agreement between the HOA, Columbine East HOA, Columbine Point Ad Hoc Committee, and the original owner that annexed the property into the city. This is true. There was an agreement in May of 2007. This was signed by all of those parties I just stated. However, in 2018, July of 2018, this agreement was released by all those same parties. This was released by the Columbine Point HOA, This was released by the Columbine East HOA as well as the original owner and the owner who was purchasing the property at that point in time. So yes, that agreement did happen. However, 11 years later, that agreement was released.
Meaning canceled.
Canceled. It is no longer enforceable. It is not in effect. This was a recorded document, or is a recorded document. This document can be found under reception number 898817. You can find that through the Montrose County Recorder's Office. Lastly, the one thing I would like to state is that what we're doing here is taking all of the facts here tonight that are brought in front of you tonight and applying that to the code. So Will, in his presentation, he set forth what the code states for rezones. If you believe the facts that are presented before you tonight are in conformance with the code as laid out, we should approve. If you feel as though the facts before you tonight do not meet the code standards, then there should be a denial.
Thank you. Can I clarify council's choice of action tonight? Because I understand there's the approval, which would be to accept the Plan Commission's recommendation, denying it, or isn't there an ability to approve with conditions that council would establish?
Yes, there is the ability to add conditions. We recommend against this as a city staff simply because in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, most of the staff is not going to be here. These rezones are not in fact recorded, so they do not go along with the property. Yes, they are in city records. However, if you're doing a title search as an attorney or anyone, you're going to go through the actual records. You're going to go to the recorder's office. You're going to check all of the records that relate to that property. This will not be found in a title search. But it is a possibility that we can do conditions on this.
Okay, that's similar to something we just cleaned up on the other end of town where some conditions were once recorded, but we cleaned that up in a whole different process because of that reason. Okay.
Mr. Dowsey, one of the things that was mentioned was, and I think, is this the item you're talking about deed restrictions? Was that the agreement between the HOAs and the former property owner?
Yes.
Or is that a separate issue?
It technically wasn't a deed restriction. It was an agreement between the three parties that I stated, the two HOAs and the owner of the then owner of the property. I'll also make of note that the city was not a party to that agreement. Really, that agreement has no binding on the city whatsoever. If we felt as though the rezone was proper and the agreement was still effective, we could still make the rezone happen. We can approve that rezone. What would then happen is if in fact the newest owner and the agreement were still effective and they violated that agreement, the city is not a party to that. It would be a private disagreement.
They'd sue each other.
Yes, trying to put it a little nicer that, but yes, a giant lawsuit between two private entities. And that's the course of action that would happen there. Again, the city would not be a part of that.
Thank you.
Thanks. I guess I'm a little curious here, and I understand and recognize clearly that we are looking at a rezone. We understand what the criteria are for a rezone. And I further understand that this covenant, agreement, restriction, whatever you wish to call it, does not directly affect our decision on a rezone. But I think also when we're taking these matters into consideration, we need to know all of the facts behind what's being asked. And I'm, to be honest, a bit confused because I did read the recorded documents. And it's interesting that the document that was recorded in May of 2017 was at the approximate same time as the original zoning of this property, divided by Cedar Creek at R2 and R3, and the agreement reflects that. Then in 2018, just prior to the closing of a sale on that property, the abandonment or the avoidance of that agreement was recorded. But it's also further interesting to me that in our packets and as part of this record, there is a resolution of Columbine Estates, Columbine East, I believe, is the resolution. And that resolution, and I do not have a signed copy of that. I don't know if we were presented with a signed copy of that resolution or not. In my packet, it's not signed, but it purports to be a resolution of the HOA, signed by one of the signatures, or the signature on, the purported signature on the resolution is the same person who signed the abandonment of the agreement. So I'm confused as to, it seems that the association, by the turnout of folks here tonight, and I'm sure we'll hear from them, have some concerns about us approving this on the one hand. On the other hand, their association seemed to be a party to abandoning the agreement that otherwise restricted this to R2 and R3 zoning. That's a question I have in my mind. I don't know if there's an answer available to it. But I do think while we can't take that into consideration on the specific issue of rezone and whether the criteria have been met for rezone, I think it's important to really understand what the neighborhood feels.
So my question in looking at it is, the creek seems to naturally divide the property, so I can understand why the property was zoned the way it was initially. And to me, it doesn't look to me like conditions have substantially changed enough to warrant a rezone. That being said, I am super proud of the housing efforts that we have made for the city of Montrose in building apartments and townhomes. And we have rezoned property, we have allowed increased density, we have a low-income multifamily apartment buildings going in next to my subdivision, and I think those have all been appropriate to meet the housing demands that we have in this community. This one, however, I don't see that it just doesn't feel like that changing the zoning makes a lot of sense here when I look at the surrounding properties are R1A and R1B, and the only R3 that touches this is the same property, but on the other side of the creek. So I'm a little concerned in that regard, and I guess that isn't a question so much as a comment. I'll turn it over to my fellow counselors who may want to comment or ask a question.
I've got actually a question for the applicant and a couple. You talk about rehabilitating and utilizing the waterway. And Cedar Creek, one of the things we found out is that the Army Corps of Engineers has a great deal of impact on the ability to rehabilitate or utilize creeks. And I was kind of curious, have you actually been in contact with the Army Corps of Engineers concerning that? If you don't mind coming on back up to the microphone.
So as we move forward with the project, as we move forward into preliminary plat, we will be working with the Army Corps of Engineers. We've hired Delmont Consultants to do the engineering on the project. So Army Corps of Engineers has not been, as we're working through the finance and the feasibility of this project. Madam Mayor, if I may state that the reason for the rezone is not to increase density. I need to make that very clear. It is not to increase density in the slightest. It's to increase the diversity of housing options. It is not to max out the density as you saw through Jace's and Will's presentation. Under no circumstances are we looking to max out density. What we're looking to do is offer a different style of home that does not exist, and that's what we're looking to create. There is a need for the diversity different types of housings. As we talked with the city, we also found that, the single-family home market is fairly saturated. What doesn't exist are duplexes and townhomes for people to get into. And so what you'll notice through Jace's presentation as well was that, our max density that we're shooting for is 117 for the R3 zone. We could, with a PD and R2, go on to 119. This is not about maxing out density. We're not even looking to max out the R2 density. We're not looking to max out R3 density. It is specifically to allow for diversity of housing and for choice for residents, for lock and leave options in a very nice area or nice part of town. We believe that that has it. To further that, we will be working with the Army Corps of Engineers to make sure that we are in full compliance. That's going to take hundreds of thousands of dollars in engineering. Our first step is to get the approved rezone so that we can move forward with the engineering that needs to take place to do that.
One question I have while you're there is, one of the comments you said that you're not looking to do eightplexes at this time.
Oh, it's not even on our option. That was through the conversation and we've spent a substantial amount of money in the layout and the design of duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. If you guys wanted to remove 8plex as an option and take it down to 4, I'd be more than happy to do so. That was just in talks with, as we were going forward, I'd be more than happy to accept that because we have no intention of changing the design. It pencils out and it works and it fits the need that we're looking for in its current state, the way we have it designed.
Well, as a follow-up question, and I appreciate what you're doing and your desire to create a nice amenity for the city and homes that we definitely do need. When I'm looking at a rezone, I'm not looking, to be very honest with you, at pretty pictures, and I'm not looking at a specific subdivision because that's a whole nother process. What I'm looking at is the land that's being requested to be rezoned appropriate for whatever could be built in that zone district. And I'm certainly not certainly believe you have all of the best intentions, but if you got this zoning tonight, you could turn around and sell the project next week, and whoever bought it could then take advantage of that R2 zoning. So that's not why we're here.
You mean the R3 zoning?
I mean of the R3 zoning, excuse me. So that's why when we look at this, we have to look at it from the standpoint, what could an owner do with that property, notwithstanding your good intentions?
Understood. How do I, so inside the R3 zoning, there is a lot of checks and balances. I'm not requesting R3A on any level. I'm requesting R3. And inside of R3, there's a lot of checks and balances, which provide a lot of safety for this design and for our development as a whole. This is going to require a PD, so a plan development. It's going to require me to come back in front of everybody with the exact plan as stated. As Jay said, if we were to be granted this rezone, the city and the city staff, the city planners, nobody would be on board with rezoning this for 309 units. So it would fall, if by some wild choice we decided to sell it, that would never pass through. So you would still have a ton of checks and balances along the way so that wouldn't happen. It's not as if we have an R3A zone where they can just put up a multifamily unit complex. Currently, I live over at the Brooks, and I have no R3A properties around me, other than the newest one that just came up, which is very close to Otter Pond and other places. But we have a farm field that's going to be connected to Brown's Ranch, the Grove, and the Brook that is zoned R3A. So I'm not asking for that. I'm not asking to put a massive apartment complex in the middle of homes. I'm asking to put a beautifully well-crafted design townhome complex, which fits a need and a desire that will blend in with the surrounding areas. There are 1As, there's also R3 just north of us as well.
Okay, does council have any other questions for the applicant? If not, I'll ask him to sit down again so we can continue asking staff questions. We can call you back up if we have more questions. Thank you,
I'd
Mr.
like the staff to bring up that.
I think we've got questions for staff at this point, Mr. Cook. Thanks.
Thank
So
you.
I want to follow up on those comments because, so I want to better understand, if the zoning stayed the same, could the applicant apply for a conditional use for, say, duplexes in R2, which is normally restricted to single-family housing only? Are duplexes a conditional use, or are they prohibited outright in an R2?
They're prohibited outright. So the only allowed use residential-wise is that single-family detached use for R2. Whereas R3, again, would allow single-family as a use by right, single-family detached, excuse me, duplexes as a use by right, and then anything beyond duplexes, so a triplex, townhomes, an apartment, that would require a conditional use permit. So again, that would have its own hearing process in the form of really a conditional use permit as well as a PD process, more than likely as well. So I think to the applicant's point, there is a lot of checks and balances in the sense of future steps if it were to be rezoned, but yeah.
Okay, and can you remind me for both the conditional use and for a planned development, there's staff approval, there's staff plus planning commission, and sometimes there's city council. Can you remind me on those two different things, who approves it?
Sure, yeah, for a conditional use permit, it would actually be solely planning commission. That said, for a plan development, it has three phases. It has a sketch plan, and that actually went to planning commission alongside the rezone. The sketch plan does not go to city council. The next step of a plan development would be the preliminary PD plan, and that would go to planning commission, and then that would go to city council for approval. And then following that, it would go to a final PD plan, which would just go to city council. So it's very similar to the subdivision process, but that's what it would look like. And then again, if they're looking to subdivide, it would go through those phases. Once again, it wouldn't have to go to sketch plan again, but it would go to preliminary, and then it would go to final. So a lot of hearings, needless to say.
And then the other question I have is, I guess, just to reiterate what Mr. Reed says, which is, when we rezone, that we don't rezone on a developer's promise to do it a certain way. When we rezone, that means anything allowed can happen in that allowed zoning. And we know in this community that projects start and stop all the time. Things are going along now. We've got a lot of development happening, but I've seen that same development in 2006 come to a grinding halt and then pick up where it left off. And so I think I am also concerned that despite how, I mean, it looks like the pictures are great, it looks like a need, it looks beautiful, it looks really well thought out. I'm just concerned that those are all like kind of promises that aren't legally binding when we make a zoning decision. And you're nodding. So, I mean, that's fair to say that once it's rezoned, it can be used by this developer, he could sell it, his plans could change.
Absolutely fair. Absolutely fair in our eyes. And that's something we balance as we discuss with the applicant as they move forward with their projects. And so actually I'll have Will just pull up the density so we can just look at that, because I think that paints the picture of what is legally allowed essentially as a use by right, and then what the processes might look like for anything beyond that. So looking at this, if you're looking at, again, if they were looking, if a rezone were approved to R3, without a PD process, they could do 86 units of single family. They could technically do 114 units of duplexes. Again, those are outright allowed uses. If they were coming back with a PD and they were looking at single family, 143, if they were looking at duplexes, 190 as total unit counts. Again, that would be the PD process that would go in front of you. And then anything different, let's say townhomes, multifamily, would go through this combined plan development conditional use permit process that again comes in front of you. Actually, all of these will come in front of you because subdivisions also come in front of you. So any application that you see moving forward on this property will come in front of you in one capacity or another. But I guess it's, from the density standpoint, I guess it just paints the picture of exactly kind of what's allowed. A lot of subdivisions typically go through the PD process because they are looking to at least not maximize density, but utilize more density because of that 40%, give or take, that has to go to open space and roadways. And so that PD allows them to reduce those lot sizes to keep the density within a certain threshold, but to reduce lot sizes to accommodate kind of a pretty large area of land for those infrastructure needs. And I also, I'm sorry, maybe if I was going to cut in there, one clarifying point is these numbers are fairly tough to say that they're exact. The only exact numbers really are the maximum density with a planned development. That is the absolute max that it could, in theory, could be. The 40%, that's a give or take probably 5 to 10 units on either side, up or down. But these are not exact numbers. We just wanted to paint a picture of kind of theoretically what might be possible, because we know this question came up a lot in the letters.
I was wondering if staff could bring up the picture showing all the zoning in the surrounding areas.
You can't move it with your fingers, Doug. I know you're trying, but that's not going to do it. Do you see where I'm talking about how everything that touches that R2 is R1 except for the stuff on the other side of the creek? I'm not asking you guys, sorry. I know it's painful to watch and not have a voice yet. Your turn will come. This is our process. We need to ask our questions and flesh out, what our issues are. I think that also helps you better address us, because you can hear what our concerns are or what our concerns aren't.
And I think that map is a really good representation of what is there and what was there in 2007 and shortly thereafter. And, the way I look at it, if we were looking at an annexation with zoning attached to the annexation, and it's just now coming into the city, that's one set of facts. But here we're looking at a rezone already in the city with existing zoning. And that's why I think the code reads the way it does. One of the conditions being that the area affected or adjacent areas have changed materially since the area was last zoned. Has the need for housing increased in that period of time? Absolutely. The goals and objectives of the comp plan, I support 210%. But the question in my mind is this right at this time to rezone that? Have the criteria for the rezone been met in the context of what it is currently zoned? Has it materially changed? You could argue that it supports the comp plan, and it does, because I can see how it does. But I am concerned about rezoning something where I'm not convinced that the conditions to that locality have changed substantially enough to change the zoning classification.
And I want to hear from my fellow city councilors who haven't maybe chimed in as much with their comments or questions.
I'd like to make a comment. Having grown up in the area, and occasionally I drive down that new 6700 road. My concerns are I don't think that R3 zoning, even though the pictures are really nice, I like the style, I just don't think that it complements the area because it is low density, and I think that And from my perspective, I think it could be a public safety issue based on the fact that 6700 road goes through. We have a new bridge that has to be put in at the cost of a couple $1 million. I don't believe that Miami at this time is adequate, and I don't believe that the city should be at this time considering making Miami super improvements when we have other streets within the downtown area that could use the funds to repair the sidewalks, the streets, and that sort of stuff. And again, I do like the design, being a construction person, but I just don't think that it complements the area, which was, I believe, one of the three things that they said was. So anyway, that's just my comment.
I would say that in looking at the zoning in the surrounding area, I think the existing zoning does a real good job of transitioning from one zone to another the way it exists at the present time.
I didn't hear your last part of your comment.
Which one?
Me?
Doug.
No, I was looking at the surrounding zoning and how everything progresses down, and I think that the existing zoning on the property makes a good transitional move as it moves south and to the east.
For the other R3A area.
I will say this right now. So I'm asking you all to comment because should we, no matter what our decision is today, it needs to be really clear why we made the decision we made tonight, and that the record needs to reflect not just folks nodding their heads when their fellow city council member speaks, but everyone being on the record and citing particularly why you might feel like voting one way or the other. So if I come back to you to maybe add more information, I'm not just trying to put you on the spot so much as I'm trying to create a record for our decision. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
You're a lawyer, you know that, but.
So I want to jump in finally.
Yeah.
One of the things kind of looking at from, I won't say devil's advocate, but just on a different perspective, is that there is a huge push by the state of Colorado and some of our current legislature to overrule local decision-making on zoning. There is a large push to increase density in cities, and one of the things that we have found to be true is that the best way to fight that is to get ahead of the curve by making responsible and wise decisions, fact-based, that will help our city in our density and diversity of housing. So I want to make it really clear that that is on our mind as well, and that we do keep that in our thoughts, that we want to make wise decisions anyway, but we also want to make sure that we're not having that decision-making process taken away from us by not making decisions.
Absolutely, but I think that the reason that we care so much about retaining the local control for these issues are because there are situations like this where we know that road and we've ridden on that road or we've walked on that road where we feel like we, as the local elected officials, know more about what's appropriate in our community than the folks in Denver do. And so I think this is a really good example of why we wouldn't want the state coming in and saying quadplexes are used by right in every residential zone. Because I think at the local level, we're going to say that's not necessarily true. Right. So while I believe that we're doing a lot of work to get ahead of the state making decisions like allowing accessory dwelling units in every residential zone and allowing higher density and reducing setbacks, and I'm really proud of the work we're making. The reason we want to retain local control, I think, is decisions just like this one.
Yeah, we know the land that we're living on.
May I ask a question? You two are pretty up on the legislative issues within the state. But I thought I read something about occupancy. About occupancy, and again, I would be concerned based on occupancy if that new rule or law passes, which is supported by the governor, and it could pass the state legislature because it's already been tentatively approved, that there could be no limits on occupancy on a one-bedroom house, townhouse or apartment or something like that. That's just my understanding. And again, to have a higher density like that in that low-density area, again, in my thought, would promote a health and safety issue.
And to your point, Ed, as well as to yours, Dave, we as a council, I believe unanimously agree that, and I mentioned it before, we have a urgent housing need in this community that we need to deal with, and I believe that we are dealing with it. But we also have to take into consideration, where is it appropriate to deal with that need? And I am not being convinced that this is an appropriate area, and I would be glad to state on the record my feeling about how I do not believe the burden of satisfying the rezoning criteria has been met. Notwithstanding, I applaud our staff and what they have put together and brought to us, and you guys have done an excellent job. But this is one of those cases, in my opinion, you haven't done anything wrong, you haven't misstated any facts, but as to the conclusion of what we should do, notwithstanding your recommendation, reasonable minds can differ. And I would suggest that this may be one of those occasions without any criticism of what you guys have done, are doing, or I know will do in the future. So I want you to understand that that's not where we're coming from. At least that's not where I'm coming from. And so, Madam Mayor, would it be appropriate to poll council to see if we're ready for a motion? I know everybody would like to speak, but
I think that we should allow public comment first before there's a motion, but I think everyone has heard perhaps how the counselors are feeling about this. I feel like the one last piece that maybe didn't get talked about is the comprehensive plan. We spent a lot of time as a community. There were multiple stakeholders in that comprehensive plan. It does serve as a guiding document, and I think that the comprehensive plan could be interpreted to either support rezoning or to support not zoning it. So I kind of feel like the comprehensive plan, as important as it is, doesn't weigh in on one side or the other of this issue. That depending on what you want, you could read it as supporting rezoning or not rezoning. So that's just for what it's worth. That's how I think the comprehensive plan comes into play on this. Any last comments from council members before we accept public comment? Okay. So public, you've heard us deliberate. You've heard the things that we're concerned about. You've heard what we're thinking. So I would ask that that the public comment that you offer to us tonight is important. It's valuable. But one of the first things an attorney once cautioned me is, council makes a decision based on the facts, the discussion we've had, and we don't take a vote of the room. And so in any situation, the room doesn't have a vote. And what I guess I'm trying to say is that whether 2 of you make public comment tonight or 50 of you make public comment, we don't keep a tally mark on a little sheet back here, and whoever comments the most on one side or the other wins. That's not how this works. We do turn to you in case the public has issues or things they don't think we've thought of or that we should be aware of. And I also will ask that you use the time to share with us your opinion. And it isn't a question time, unfortunately. I know sometimes you might have a question of staff or a question of the applicant, but that isn't what public comment is for. It's for you to give us comments. And I know it's really tempting to turn around and ask a question of somebody, but that isn't really what public comment is for. And if you did ask a question, it wouldn't really go answered. So just so you're not frustrated by that, I'll just say that from the get-go. Did I ask our youth council member? Hey, Shiloh, how are you tonight?
I'm good.
You good? Did you draw the short straw? Because sometimes we're done in 45 minutes.
No. Everybody else is busy, so I volunteer.
So are you learning a little bit about what civic engagement looks like?
I am. I'm learning a lot. I do admit I'm a little bit confused. I was wondering if I could maybe ask a question now of the applicant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You want to ask a question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Please.
So I heard a lot of talk about the different reasons behind this subdivision and such. Some being the need for housing in Montrose and other things. And the crux of the matter seems to be, sorry, I'm trying to like piece together all of this stuff in my head, but I don't entirely understand what need this subdivision is fulfilling for the people of Montrose at this moment.
Okay,
And
and
I
you
was
want the
wondering-
applicant to take a stab
Yeah,
at answering
a little
that
bit of
for you?
clarification.
So, Mr. Cook is, so the question is, can you help Shiloh, who is in, I want to say 10th grade, but are you already in 11th grade?
Yeah, 10th grade.
10th grade, understand what your housing project, how it helps meet the needs of the community?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Shiloh. So over the last, I think it's 2 years, City Council Planning Commission has approved 1,500 single-family lots, 1,500 lots in and around Montrose. And that's a lot, right? So and when we talk about the average price of a single-family home going for $450 and upwards, I think they're starting in a lot of neighborhoods at like $535,000 and up. This gives the opportunity for somebody who just graduated college to get into their first home and build equity. At a starting price of in the low 300s, it allows somebody the opportunity to purchase their first home and not have like a fixer-upper for that matter. It allows somebody the opportunity to build equity into a home so that someday they can sell it and then move to a single-family home if they so choose. It also fits the need for a lot of retired active adults. A lot of retired active adults love the mentality of being able to lock their doors, leave and go on vacation, and then come back and know that their yard is still maintained, all their amenities are still the same. So it fits a need on several factors, mainly being the effectiveness and the affordability for somebody to purchase it, whether that's a young professional, a blue-collar worker, and/or a retired active couple who doesn't want to spend $500,000 on their retirement home.
And I think the piece that maybe connects the dots would be that when you build a duplex or a triplex, they share a wall, and so it's cheaper to build. And so it's then therefore the sale price is less expensive than a single family home. And so I don't know if that connection was made there on that, but that's.
Yeah, and also the lot infrastructure costs go, hand in hand with that. It allows the American dream for more people that can't necessarily pocket out $500,000.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. So Shiloh, we're either turning you into a city planner or at least giving you a really good essay for your college applications, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Bynum, just so you know, we've offered our youth city councilor the option to leave early tonight.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say again, Shiloh, we're so thankful that you're here, and also we know that you may leave early, and so.
Awesome.
I
So if
wanted
you
to
get
know
up
that
and
too.
walk out, no one will be offended, no one should be offended. It means your ride came and/or you have homework, right?
No, it's all good. I did choose to be here by choice, so like it's on me. So.
And we absolutely salute that, by the way. Yeah.
And
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm proud of you. I met you before you even moved to Montrose when you were 3, so I'm super excited that you're here and doing this. Okay, that being said, when we do public comment, we'll invite you forward. Please state your name clearly for the record, and then we ask, we used to ask folks for their address, but really, we just need to know like what part of town or what subdivision you live in to provide context. Because we accept public comment whether you live in the city or you live in the county. We don't distinguish, but just sometimes knowing where you live helps us to provide context. So you don't have to give your street address. So that being said, who would like to make public comment? And I'm just gonna kind of go from the front row back. So I happen to know Mr. Otto's name, so I'll call on him by name to come forward and address council. How many of you, let me just see by a show of hands, how many of you still feel like you want to make public comment tonight? Show of hands really high. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay.
There are a few people downstairs at this point. I don't know if they plan to give public comment or
Okay.
not, but I think we have a handful downstairs.
Okay, but there's a handful of people downstairs because we ran out of chairs, so they may elect to come up. So I think in the interest, so that we can hear everyone's time, I think that 2 minutes, I think we'll do public comment at 2 minutes, because I think what you have to say, I mean, we're all pretty familiar with the details, so I think we'll do 2 minutes, and that way we can do our very best to hear from everyone. And if you want to get up, and you don't have to use your whole 2 minutes, you can say, I agree with everything that's been said, and. So, awesome. Let's start with you. Name for the record and neighborhood.
My name's Kenneth Otto. I live in the Columbine East subdivision, right across the street, across Miami, from the proposed rezone. I appreciate the opportunity to address you guys tonight. Hoping you receive my email regarding the density impact to R1A and R1B communities directly. If you haven't had a chance to read it, it's out there, of course. I'm very encouraged with everything I'm hearing, and I was under the understanding that we didn't have a time limit, so I have a very, might be kind of lengthy, but I think you guys pretty much covered a lot of what I wanted to say. But I'm going to wade into this, and when my 2 minutes is up, if you have questions for me, which are some of them that Mr. Reed asked, the history, why that was vacated in 2018, I can try to answer those. I'm not the guy that signed it. I will say that the HOA did do a resolution that was signed. Unfortunately, the signer, Mr. Maddox, is a snowbird, and he got away before he sent me a copy of the signed version. That's why I sent you guys an unsigned one. We do have a signed one, but it's in his possession, and couldn't get to it. In addition to what I've sent you, Stephen Bush sent you guys, I believe on Saturday, an email talking about the history of the existing zoning, when it was done, why it was done, and why it's still the appropriate zoning. Nothing has material changed in the neighborhood since the time of the zoning effort, and it was certainly not erroneous at the time, and we all believe that it was accurate. The prior meeting a couple weeks ago, we heard, and we also heard a little bit tonight,
I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
Oh,
that goes by quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, okay. I appreciate where you guys are at, and I'm very happy to hear it. I hope you guys stick with that, and I think, that you guys have been very accurate in what there is for a reason to deny this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, still, we're going to just kind of move front to back because it's easiest.
May I ask a question?
No questions.
Okay. Procedural question.
Procedural, absolutely.
Can other people that get recognized to speak, can they give that time to another person?
They cannot. That's a great question, and that would be up to whoever is running the meeting, generally under the way that open meetings and city council government meetings are. And it's really up to my discretion. And I think tonight, given what I've heard from council and given everyone in the audience, we're not going to do something where you say, well, I'm really representing my 12 neighbors, so I get half an hour. We're not going to do it that way. We're going to do 2 minutes a person, and you've got to stand at the podium for your 2 minutes. But that's a fair question, because that can change depending on where you are and what the meeting is and who's running the meeting. So
Right.
Fair question.
Thank you for your time.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, front row still, and we're going to move our way back.
Patrick Burns, 3804 Lone Tree Lane. I feel like when you have stated and existing zoning, and people have invested, hundreds of people have invested tens of millions of dollars in their homes, that to change the zoning after the fact is like changing the rules after the game has started. And I feel like this compromises the integrity and trust people would feel towards the city governance. So,
Thank you very much.
and I have a few other things to say, but
okay.
these other people have too, and I wouldn't want to steal their thunder. So.
Good deal. Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Ma'am, you in the blue, bright blue shirt, please.
My name is Sue Ellen Gary. I live on Paintbrush Way in the cul-de-sac, which means that my house, which faces the cul-de-sac, so the side of my house faces 6700 Road, is directly across from two of the fourplexes. And I wanted to address, I think there's someone else that you've addressed the zoning issues there. But there was a lot of talk from the Planning Commission about the need for affordable housing. And my house, which is 2,100 square feet with a 3-car garage that is brick on 4/10 of an acre, I've just done a little calculation, comes out to be about $288 a square foot. The best number if I could find for the average cost per square foot of housing in Montrose that AI could give me was $268 a square foot. Now, with this developers, I'm sorry I'm bad with names, but this developers coming in with maybe a base price of $350,000 for an 800 square foot house, that comes out to be $437 a square foot. And in the talks we had, and the other meeting we had, I heard him say something about maybe a top number, because of all of these luxury additions, of somewhere around $700,000 for a unit. So looking at the largest size unit as being 1,200 square feet, that comes out to be $583 a square foot. I don't know where that comes into the affordable housing section. That comes into like luxury housing. I mean, I have, you know, an R1B house that's fairly new. And density doesn't mean affordability. California can tell you that.
Thank you very much.
Yes. And then I
So-
also.
So you're out of time.
Oh, I'm all out of time. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
thanks.
so sorry. 'Cause
No,
can I just get? Can I get somebody's couple of minutes?
You don't.
No, I can't.
It doesn't,
Okay.
you know, it doesn't work that way because if I give you a couple more minutes, then
know.
I need to
I'm
give the next
sorry.
24 people a couple
Now,
more
did you
minutes.
start my timing when I hit the microphone?
We start
I'm
when you
picking-
start
I'm sorry,
talking.
picking
That's how it
50-50,
works.
yes,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay. So we'll continue on in the front row. Okay.
Good evening.
And the timer you'll see it up there. It's not a
Okay.
surprise.
Start.
Okay.
Thank you for allowing us to have a few comments. One of the biggest things that I've seen recently is
What-
that
keep
6,700
your
room.
name. I'll just remind you to start with your name.
I am Martin Crespin. I live at Iron Horse. And one of the biggest things that we've seen is that 6,700 blow up. The traffic has just expanded great. If you change this to an R3, it's not just going to double. It's going to get worse and worse. And you talk about planned roads, bridges. What is the city required to do? I don't know how you're going to compete with the CDOT on that highway, but it's not good. I don't believe the timing is right, and this location is not right. If we need more property, annex a couple of miles going east. There's plenty of sheep out there that we can displace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're still working our way through the front row. It'd be more of a challenge if we started the timer when you left your seat, right? Okay, let's start with your name.
Gary Reed from Columbine Estates. Looking at the map up there and the way things are zoned, I think this is, and this was brought up, a good buffer between the way it is and going to R3. I've only been here 10 months, and I've seen the traffic increase on 6700 dramatically, even on Miami dramatically, and I'm already concerned what's going to happen once this gets built out. And to the point of just having this little bit of a transition to R3, I think is the way to go. And the fact that half the property approximately is going to be R3, where they can put the higher density up. So I agree with what's been said. I appreciate your math. I think that was right on. And I thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the front row? Okay, we'll go to the second row. Anyone in the second row have additional information they want council to hear? Okay, you, sir, in the black puffy. Again, your name and subdivision, street.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Scott Hawkinson, I live in Ironhorse subdivision. I'd like to go back with Mr. Ulibarri said and kind of just tag on that because a lot of people have already said, kind of stole my thunder. But one of the things that says this amendment, and this is in Municipal Code 11712, this amendment is not adverse to the public health, safety, and welfare. I totally disagree with that. With the traffic that's already on 6700 Road, everybody said it's doubled, tripled, quadrupled. Miami can't handle that. We already know that. So it's like, let's build it and then we'll try to fix it later kind of mentality, and I don't agree with that. Fix it, then build it, so we don't have the public safety. Another thing is that probably a lot of you know what I do. You have to hit the panic button and we evacuate these subdivisions, our streets can't handle it. I'm really concerned about the R3 that dumps into Iron Horse, because you're gonna quadruple the traffic into that. Not in the EMS, but if I work with the city emergency manager, if we have to push the evac button, what does that look like? Is a public health, safety, and welfare of those residents. So that's what I think.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay. You guys are going to use all our time clapping tonight. We get it. Okay. Anyone else in the second row who wants to make public comment, add additional information that council may want to consider that we haven't? Okay, I'm seeing a hand from over here, from the outside, and then we'll come back to you, ma'am. Good evening. I'll remind you to start with your name and then your neighborhood.
Out of Renfro, well, it's loud, Combine East. Point.
Oh, wait,
Point.
we're going to change. Hey, Lisa,
Point.
can you do that? Adam doesn't just get an
Yeah, I'll
extra
get 3,
minute.
thank you.
No, it doesn't work that way.
So, can you bring up the map of the zoning, Will or Jace, real quick? So, as David, as you talked about, Combine, or that piece of ground is surrounded by R1B and R1, right? And what you guys can kind of see is the demographics of our communities right here. So, I'm one of the youngest one. Matt Box and I, we graduated together, so we're some of the youngest in our community. As a realtor, I understand the need for affordable housing. I understand the need for triplexes. I understand the need for townhomes. I understand trying to get clients into those. I get that. At the same time, I live in a community. I have a Parkinson's deteriorating father-in-law. And a lot of our community is senior citizens. So I did demographic ages of our community. So the guess of what is our median age in Combine Point, 70.2. So we have Combine East is probably similar. And a lot of them, we walk our streets. And so if we want to talk about, I like the word intimate, I like what Chris is talking about, intimate moments. But our intimacy in our communities is funneled through the way we do community ourselves. And that means the way we walk our streets. R1B and R1. R1 has no sidewalks. R1B has one sidewalk. And so we use the street. And we cross 6700 between both subdivisions. And so health, safety, and welfare is something that you're going to hear not on just the west side, but as it moves to the east side, and it never came to you guys directly because that whole application stopped, but you're hearing it now. And I think health, safety, and welfare of our median age community is important.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, and then ma'am, I think I saw another hand in that second row with the striped shirt. Maybe you've decided not to speak, so we'll go to the next row back. Was there a hand over there? Okay, sir, come on forward. And again, if you would start with your name and your subdivision or your street.
Lyle Klug, I'm from Columbine East. I was going to read the letter from Steve Bush, but you all have it, and we've discussed most of the items. Just to say that he is not in favor of the rezoning. I had a couple of questions that weren't answered. One was, how many households in Montrose have but one car?
So we're not doing questions, this is public
Okay.
comment, so you
Yeah,
can.
I'll throw the question out for you to consider then. How many have one car? Very few. This shows one car garages. Secondly, I think the R3 zoning talked about being close to transportation. We're nowhere close to any public transportation, so another thing to consider. So I would put my opinion as a no on the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we did receive those letters that you mentioned, like from Mr. Bush, and they are part of the official record, and they are available as written public comment for this agenda item. Okay, I see another hand come up. All I see is a sleeve, though. Yes. Sorry, all I saw was a sleeve. Let's start with your name and.
Suzanne Newland, and I'm in Columbine Estates on Heather Lane. And my husband and I had written a letter to the Planning Commission because we could not attend that meeting. But Mr. Cook came up to us because he knows us, we're retired teachers, and he had read our letter, and he said, what I'm putting in is perfect, because we said we would love, as active retirees, to find a lock and leave type duplex. He said, what I'm building would be perfect. And I was shocked when he said, what, I agree with the one-car garage. I'm like, no, we're active retirees. We both happen to have a car. We need a two-car garage. And when I saw the $350,000 for a studio, and you know, we still have too much junk, like a lot of retirees, so we probably would need more than 1,000 square feet. So that's not what we're looking for. So I agree with the age of our communities out there. We are a lot of retirees, and we walk a lot, we bike a lot. We don't do it on Miami anymore because it's not safe. Where we walk across, like Mr. Renfro just said, thankfully the little push lights are on, and sometimes the traffic stops and sometimes it doesn't when we cross there, but I'm concerned about the traffic. But Jason Byler, when he owned it, I was gonna ask him, I said, why don't you take our house and make it a duplex? It would be perfect. 1,700 square feet, two-car garage, we'd buy it. So would a lot of other retirees in the community. But that's not what we're looking for. Active retirees aren't looking for a one-car garage, and I don't think young families are looking for a one-car garage. So I'm really happy with what I'm hearing from you guys, and I really hope you vote it down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, who else do I see? Another hand, additional comment that thinks you, sir, in the gray shirt. I'll remind you just to start with your name and your neighborhood or your street.
John Bradshaw. I live over in the Iron Horse. To piggyback off of Scott with the trying to not fix it before you build on it, and the gentleman that spoke about the demographics of the ages. You're going to build this single-family home, or possibly with the R3 bringing in, you know, more kids in this area. The school right across the highway, Johnson can't handle any more kids in that school. Johnson's full. So you bring all these houses in, you bring possibly apartments, duplexes. Where are these kids gonna go to school? Where does the school have the room to expand, to accept more students? It's not doable. The school doesn't have the space. The school doesn't have the land. The school doesn't have the money to even bring in trailers to bring these kids in. Where are they gonna go? That's all I have for you guys.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, other hands up in this side of the room. I see like maybe a hand in the back row. Oh, wait, a green sleeve. I see a green sleeve. Yes, yes, come on forward. You're the next contestant on the, come on down.
City Council.
And I'll just remind you, start with your name and your neighborhood or your subdivision.
Yes, I am Ann Holmes, and I live in Columbine Point. And I want to thank the City Council and the mayor initially for the improvements to 6700 Road. It has allowed me to bypass Miami Road, which I find to be one of the most unsafe roads in the city. And I agree with the other comments made about that. But one thing you probably are not aware of is that you have created a de facto bypass. If you Google driving from Ridgeway to Black Canyon, it will direct you up 6700 Road. We've already had major accidents on 6700 Road in Ogden with 2 deaths. We also had another, it was more than a fender bender at Sunnyside. There needs to be something done. The traffic on 6700 Road is inappropriate at the speed limits that people are going. And the section right along this property rezone is the worst section of the road, especially the bridge at Cedar Creek. This thing is not in keeping with the public health and safety and welfare of the neighborhood, of the neighboring property owners. Not only is Miami a very dangerous road, so is 6700 Road. There's no place for bicycles, pedestrians, and I don't think that there's any plans to have pedestrian on that side of the street or continue on up to the elementary school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, did I see some other hands out there? I see one with someone, yep, exactly. You guys are doing a great job patiently waiting for your turn. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'll
Thank you for hearing what we have to say. My name is Nancy Foote. I live in Columbine East on Primrose. And I'm one of the handful of houses whose backyards face Miami. And so out our back door, right now, we're looking at a beautiful cornfield. And this is where this R3 potential is hopefully not waiting to happen. I think that the transition from the R3 to the R2 is perfect, although I would prefer it be R1A or 1B. But of course, that's not going to happen. But there's already half of that area being R3, it's separated by Cedar Creek, and it is a nice natural separation between the R3 and the R2. The mention of health, safety, and welfare also includes mental health, too, and that is, we look out our back door every day and look across Miami, and now you're wanting us to look across to fourplexes as opposed to nothing. And I don't feel that's a really great transition. I don't feel that it's a very good thing for our property values. We moved to Montrose to be in a more rural area. The developer mentioned an urban plan. Well, we didn't move here to be urban. We moved here to be more suburban, more rural, and we bought a half an acre. So we kind of object to these small units, lot sizes, a more condensed population, and putting in single-family homes would be, we can't stop that, but that would be more acceptable than having fourplexes right out our back door. I also speak for my neighbor next door, whose backyard also faces.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's see. Do we have another hand? Okay, with the scarf. Come on forward, please. Okay, and then I'll come back over here. Thanks.
Charlene Martinson, and I'm on Columbine Lane. When I leave in the morning, right at 8 o'clock, I have to go out onto Miami. Today, there were 8 cars in a row on Miami. and we haven't even added 100 houses there. We cannot stand more density than single-family homes there in that part. It would be atrocious. Miami can't handle it, and it would be really unsafe, not to mention I'd never get out of my road.
Thank you very much. Okay, and I think there was a hand over here, maybe in the back row I saw a hand. Yes, sir. And then I'll come back over here. Thank you. You guys are doing a great job of not just saying the same thing over and over, so I appreciate that.
And I won't say the same thing either.
Okay,
My name is
fantastic. And I'll just remind you to start with your name.
Dave Farley. I live at Columbine East. I'm looking to City of Montrose housing needs, page 8. And Shiloh, this is for you. It says, using round averages, a household living in Montrose needs at least $83,000 in household income to afford a mortgage of $419,000. We've heard Mr. Cook say $350,000, but no one's been asked how much is high they're going to go. Far from affordable housing. Far from affordable housing. And prior law enforcement, sir, I would ask you, none of you make a decision based on fear, please. Make it what's best for Montrose. I mean, we're all your neighbors. All of us here are all your neighbors. So make it what's best for Montrose. And number 3, please do not rezone this. Just keep it as is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and then a hand over there.
I'm going to stand over here for 1 second because I didn't want the clock to start because I owe all of you an apology.
Now the clock's going to...
I came here loaded for bear.
Wait. We're still going to start with your name, though.
Okay,
We need to know who you are.
Fernando Belair, and I bought the 7th house in Columbine Point in 2005. I came here loaded for bear. I did my research. I read everything that was published, the PDFs that were available. And my experience with city councils has not been great. And I owe you all an apology because what I've seen here tonight is insight, intelligent questions, wisdom, looking at the comprehensive land use plan. And really, I am very, very impressed. I have all sorts of good stuff here, but it really doesn't matter. We have a comprehensive land use plan, and the staff analysis regarding section 11.712 said residential mixed density low and mixed density medium. This is exactly what exists there right now, R2 and R3. We met with the developer prior to the last meeting, and he said $350,000 to $750,000 for these condos. $750,000 to live next to 800 square foot condos that are equivalent to two-car garages? I don't know. So we have a problem not only with this property and the proposed rezoning, and we've also talked about Miami, but we also have the traffic from 565 Miles homes going up further on Miami that's going to come barreling down and take an already tough street and abuse it further. So I think that what I've seen here tonight, I can go home and I pretty much throw this in the shredder because you've all impressed me and I'm sorry for having doubted you.
Thank you for your time. Okay. Is it possible that we are going to end on that? No, okay, no, another hand. Okay. Oh, it's the applicant. I'm sorry. I couldn't, yeah, you can come forward. I mean, I'll give you your 3 minutes too. Okay. Okay.
Hi guys.
Start.
Matt Box, 200 Sage Drive. All right. Mr. Reed, you were asking about the document, why it was nullified. The developer that was buying it, Jason Byler, also developed both of our neighborhoods. And he said he was going to develop that, but he wanted the latitude to develop nice houses in that R3 zoning. So that's the reason why we signed off. And, you know, that probably didn't work out the best, but that's That was the reasoning behind that sign-off. So that's the history there. So thank you, guys. I appreciate everything that you've said.
Thank you. Okay, thanks for filling us in on the history. Okay, Mr. Cook.
Chris Cook, 2049 Brookway. Just to take this full circle, the $750,000 price range, we were referring to the condos at the bridges that were selling at the time. So that is not the sales price, and so I know I've heard that mimicked, but that's really not even why I'm up here at this moment. I'm asking for a style of home. I am not asking to increase density. I can do the same density in the current zoning that I'm asking for. I'm asking for diversity of housing and different styles. And you know, when you're years into the designing a process and designing these homes, you don't have full sale prices at this time. All we have are speculative guesses at best. What we do have is a design intent and a number count. And the number count that we're shooting for this rezone is lower than what I can do in the current zoning. You can put all sorts of handcuffs on me to do so. As many as you need to put on me, put them on. I need 117 units on that south side, which is less than what I can do in the current R2 zoning going through my PD process, which I have the right to do. This is about diversity. This is about the ability to have something different, to give choice. To give choice to a buyer, to anybody looking to change, when we drive the same neighborhoods and see the exact same homes over and over and over again, and they're replicated. That's all I'm asking to do is to diversify the homes, to diversify so that we can have something different for buyers to choose from. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cook. Okay, it looks like that we can say that we have accepted public comment on this particular agenda item.
And I checked downstairs and there are no comments.
Okay, thanks for doing that. And so I'll ask our city attorney, do you feel like council's comments earlier created a record, or do you think council now needs to discuss further, or it would be take a motion and then discuss? I'm open for your advice.
However you'd prefer. I believe there is a record at this point. I believe everybody has stated their concerns. So if you would like further discussion, by all means.
Okay.
If anybody would like to say anything.
Say their last.
Of course.
You want to say one? You want to?
Well, what I was going to suggest is that
If your mic is on and you suggest it for the record.
I would be prepared to make a motion that I believe is consistent with the record and restate that briefly for the motion.
I'll ask my fellow counselors. We can still have discussion after a motion and a second's on the floor. Would you feel comfortable with a motion being made now, or would you like to say something first? Comfortable with a motion being made? Okay, Mr. Reed.
Okay. Excuse me 1 second here. Madam Mayor, I'd like to move to deny the rezoning request. The basis of my motion being that in order for us to...
Well, hang on. I think the motion needs to be succinct. I don't think I think the motion has to have a beginning and an end.
That's fine. Then I would just simply move to deny the rezoning application. I would like the opportunity, once council has voted on that, to state the basis for the motion.
Okay. So did I hear a second from Mr. Ulibarri? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. And I think in order I'm going to ask maybe us all to restate under our current municipal code, considering the comp plan, considering the need for housing, I think just to ensure, I don't know, maybe this is what you mean by the...
Item.
Yeah.
To make sure, right now what's up on our screen for the vote is incorrect and inconsistent with the motion that has been made.
Thank you. So our city clerk can change what we're voting on. They just changed it, perfect. Okay, so see now it says motion deny. Do you see that?
I'm looking up.
Well, you might need to refresh, you might need to go back and.
Yeah,
Okay, so you guys are working out the technical details, try refreshing. I'm just going to simply state for the record that I think that following the comprehensive plan and following our municipal code, I do not see the conditions being substantially different to allow for a rezone of this property, and I would support the motion to deny based on that. Anyone else want to say anything before we vote? Okay, no.
Okay, I'm still, my screen is still showing, it says, make a motion to pass ordinance.
Mine does too.
Let's do a roll call vote, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
I want to make sure that, for the record, that we're not voting on an incorrect.
So we have a motion by Mr. Reed, seconded by Mr. Ulibarri, to deny the rezone request. So this will be at, are you in favor of denying the rezone request is the question.
Barbara Bynum?
Yes, I'm in favor of denying the rezone request.
J. David Reed?
yes, I'm in favor.
Dave Frank?
Yes.
Doug Glassbell?
Yes.
Ed Ulibarri?
Yes.
We have a unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you very much. And then I think Mr. Reed wanted to say,
Yeah, just so that the record is crystal clear, that I believe that the council has considered the rezoning criteria under the municipal code section 11712A, and that based on the evidence that we've heard this evening, I believe that this proposal is adverse to the public health, safety, and welfare, and that the existing property is in substantial conformity with the current master plan. The existing zoning was not erroneous when it was zoned in 2007, and I am convinced, based on what we've heard tonight, that the conditions in the area affected have not changed materially since the last zoning of the property. For those reasons, that was the basis of my motion.
thank you very much. So we have, so here's what happens now. So we've concluded the action part of our agenda tonight. And there's only, that passes, as we all saw, that passes unanimously to deny the rezoning request. What I would ask you all tonight is we just have like this much left of our meeting, which includes Shiloh's opportunity to give us an update on what the youth council is doing. And I would just ask that you stick around for just a few more minutes. We're going to finish up. This isn't going to drag on much longer. But I will say thank you for participating in local government. I hope that you felt heard tonight. I hope that you felt that the system and the process works. Sometimes it goes your way, sometimes it doesn't. But in every case, I would hope that you think about local government as not being them, but as being your neighbors, that we're elected by you, we're volunteers doing our very best to fulfill this job. Sometimes you're going to agree with us and sometimes you don't, but I really want to thank you for being part of the process tonight. And so I'm going to go first to youth city council comments and then to staff reports. Shiloh, can you tell us a little bit about what youth city council is up to?
Thanks, guys. So the YCC term just recently started, but we have in the planning phase right now plans for a food drive set to happen hopefully in March, partnered with Sharing Ministries. Currently, we're looking into getting connected with businesses and different parts of the community that might be willing to facilitate the food drive and help us collect those items from the community. It's still in the very base phases of planning, so I don't have much else to share about it with you. But I hope that you'll spread the word, and when it does eventually come to fruition, you might be willing to help out with that. So thank you.
Thanks, Shiloh. Does staff have any reports tonight? I wasn't aware of any. Okay. And then my fellow council members, does anyone have any comments? Anything that we need to be aware of?
Nothing important. I just wanted to make a comment on that, the design of that subdivision. I think it's a really nice design, And I think it would fit into the community, but not that specific area.
I feel like I'm the sandwich generation. I'm helping my parents downsize, and I'm also thinking my 20-year-olds who are worried they're never going to be able to afford anything or own a car. So I can definitely appreciate the need. It just didn't strike me as a need, the rezone wasn't appropriate. But anything else from council?
Yeah, I have one quick thing. I'd like to make sure people are aware that our police force is having a Citizens Police Academy, and it is a recently reformatted. So rather than over a period of some weeks going to the police academy, the Citizens Police Academy, you now have the opportunity to go to a one-day police academy. Registration is available right now. It is on March 23rd, and it is going to be a great opportunity to see what our police force does, how they do it, and why they do it. And it's a great opportunity also to bond with some of our local officers and get to know them a little better, because knowing the people that are guarding you makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And we have just such immense respect for our PD. We want to share.
Citizen Police Academy is super fun. Anything from you, Mr. Reed?
No.
Okay, then I'll just conclude with a reminder that our council meeting scheduled in the third week in February, because the city holiday is Monday the 19th, we will have both a work session and a city council meeting on February 20th. And we welcome you to come anytime and come make public comment about a non-agenda item. No one ever is here for that. So think of something you want to tell us next time. Thank you all for coming tonight. Motion to adjourn? So moved.